Her body shifted before she could comprehend what was happening, with Luke in the comic store or Kenny at the ski lodge. She was just so overwhelmed by the emotion of the situation that she moved on instinct. Her arms wrapped around Troy's freezing form gently, her eyes unclosing. He stiffened at the hug, but ultimately didn't push her off, though whatever that was because he didn't want her to or physically couldn't see it clear. She decided that it really didn't matter regardless, because she already done it. Come on, Squirt, don't get mushy on me now, he muttered. Once she pulled away, he didn't sound happy, but almost warmed expression on his blandly betrayed words. Just no more fussing and get it over with, Clementine. He sighed, slowly shutting his eyes and letting a long visible breath in the cold air. Her arm felt heavy, her fingers sticking to the leftover blood on the surface of the pistol. The numbness pooled in her stomach and traveled through her veins until it reached her mind, detaching from the scene before her. Almost as she was split into two, one Clementine held the pistol towards her friend while the other one stood by and gawked. Her raised gun, pointed at Troy, began to gently squeeze around the trigger. It was all she could really do was watch herself do it all. But instead of the damning bang, she heard an unexpected chirp from the radio in her pocket. She stopped and held in her breath, catching her throat. Troy, but instead, Troy began to squeeze, but of course, Troy just was startled by the noise was as well. His eyes were snapping open. Quickly taking out her walkie-talkie, Clementine was about to reply, but another buzz of static from her pocket. It sounded like it dawned on who was speaking on the other end, to which radio it was. She pulled out the correct device and listened carefully, keeping her fingers away from the button to respond. Tyler? Vera? Predictably, Tavia's angry voice sounded from the other end. I heard a gunshot a little while ago. I'm heading in that direction now. Almost there. I trust you are on your way too. The static that followed that didn't register right away, and the words continued to echo in Clementine's mind. She felt her heavy heart to stop, very raw and kind of fear overwhelming her. A heavy sense of dread and anxiety came over her like a rain cloud, clamping tightly onto her and not letting go. Nearby, Troy let out a growl, almost sounded like inhuman. The sound startled her so badly she nearly pulled the trigger right then and there, thinking he'd become a walker. Thankfully, she had managed to catch herself beforehand. A good thing Troy was still alive and human for now, anyway. It was simply hissed in frustration. Oh my frickin' god, he choked out bitterly, angrily, blood dripping from his teeth. His lips curled into a snarl and furrowed his head back against the trunk, forced a good bitter strangled laugh. Clearly, he wasn't as amused at the situation, but his expression laced with venom, and he retorted, Can I just die peacefully? Can I screw Tavia over? Clementine couldn't exactly disagree with the statement, but she was drowning out her worries. It wasn't as if she had considered the possibility of Tavia returning, but it did have to be soon so suddenly. She didn't feel prepared, which made her more invulnerable. If she couldn't see Tavia, that necessarily didn't mean Tavia couldn't see her. The moment she became unguarded, she was at the risk of getting killed on the spot, not to mention her friends as well. She prided herself almost always keeping a cool head, but this time she couldn't stop the panic from creeping around her. Her breath quickened. Kenny? She called out, squinting for the snow. Kenny, are you there? She felt all alone all of a sudden, not caring about the increasing volume of her voice. There was no response, prompting her to believe that Kenny couldn't hear over the harsh wind, and the sound was so white as it was, she couldn't even tell the direction she came from. Troy was the only thing she could really see. Nothing else recognizable was in sight. Sure, she might have been able to make it back to Kenny in time, but then what? They still had a measly pistol with one bullet between them, and Tavia could use her truck to find them, not to mention she had a rifle on her own. What can I do? She cursed awkwardly. Low and the pitiful, despaired words sounded, her teeth biting into her own lip. Eyes locking onto Troy as if a dying man could held all the answers. Troy suddenly steadied for a long time, his expression eerily calm. She squirmed underneath the stair, unsure if she was truly thinking of this, or his brain already began to rot. Hesitantly, she whispered over the name, but only looked away, and still deeply pondering something. His gaze still flickered into the snow now, focusing on the ground as if they were the most interesting thing in the world. He stared at the walker corpses a few feet away, with the white sky above them, the blood patches seeping through the snow behind them, and then back at Clementine. His lips were pressed firmly together, fire flickering in his eyes for the first time in a while. Fuck, he coughed. Fine, fucking fine. I'll tell you what to do, and you gotta do it exactly as I say. He looked irritated and annoyed, but still determined enough to look dead in the ears. She then nodded firmly. Okay, I understand. Even then it may not work, Troy warned, closing his eyes for a moment. But it's all I got, so we're gonna have to try. There was no hesitation in Clementine's gaze as she responded, What are we waiting for then?